You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible. Elections do have consequences, and after Republicans did nothing to restore the Voting Rights Act after it was gutted in the Shelby v. Holder decision by the U.S. Supreme Court in 2013. The Democratic-led House passed a bill today that will restore that provision of the Voting Rights Act that would require certain jurisdictions to obtain preclearance from the federal government before implementing any changes to voting practices. The bill passed 228 to 187 and was spearheaded by Congresswoman Terri Sewell of Alabama. Here's what took place in the House today.
Today is incredibly personal and special to me and my district. Alabama's 7th congressional district that includes the cities of Birmingham, Montgomery, and my hometown of Selma, Alabama. You see, voting is very personal for me, not only because I represent America's Civil Rights District, but because it was on the streets of my hometown that foot soldiers like our incredible colleague, John Lewis, shed their blood on the Edmund Pettus Bridge so that all Americans, regardless of race, could vote. Today, the House will finally pass H.R. 4, the Voting Rights Advancement Act, to protect their legacy and restore the full protections of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. I've introduced this bill for the past 3 Congresses, and I know you have on the Senate side too, Senator Leahy. But it really has been a group effort. For the past 6 years, I've been honored to have the support and input from so many wonderful stakeholders. The Leadership Council, the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, the Lawyers Committee, AFL-CIO, the Brennan Center for Justice, Maldoff, and NALEO, just to name a few. Without this and these wonderful supporters, this bill would not be here today. The Supreme Court, yes. The Supreme Court's Shelby versus Holder decision gave states with a proven history of voter discrimination free rein to re-engage in suppressive voting processes. My state of Alabama, home to Shelby County, has implemented a more restrictive voter ID law and has the audacity to close nearly a dozen polling stations as well as DMVs since that decision. Alabama isn't alone. More than 24 states have enacted strict voter ID laws since 2013. State legislatures have worked to gerrymander districts, purge voter rolls, and reduce early voting. Today, as we pass H.R. 4, we protect the legacy of the foot soldiers of the voting rights movement, like our wonderful Congressman John Lewis. Ordinary patriotic Americans who achieved extraordinary social change in the name of justice. To invoke the words of 103-year-old Amelia Boynton Robinson, who was also bludgeoned on that bridge in 1965, and who was my special guest in 2015 for the State of the Union as we celebrated the 50th anniversary of the Selma to Montgomery March. She was often approached by so many people at 103, and they would always say the same thing: "We stand on your shoulders. We stand on your shoulders." And she, in her inimitable words, would often say, "Get off my shoulders. Do your own work," is what she would say. So on this wonderful day, as we pass H.R. 4, I want to invoke her words and say, Miss Amelia, we're doing our own work. We're passing H.R. 4, and we're making sure that voter equality is alive and well in America today.
This ongoing struggle to redeem the soul of America. We're not there yet. And there are forces in America today trying to take us back to another time and another place. But with the passage of this bill, we're saying we're not going back, we're going forward. The only thing I did or tried to do with a few other people is to get the right to vote. We gave a little blood on that bridge to help redeem the soul of America. So our struggle is an ongoing struggle. We can never give up. We can never lose hope. We're going to pass it here.
Yes.
Today, we're going to do it, Madam Speaker.
We're going to do it.
We're going to do it. And we're going to send it to the Senate.
Yes.
We must do it. The vote is the most powerful, nonviolent instrument or tool we have in a democratic society. And people should be able to use it, all of our citizens. So thank you very much.
Joining us now is Michigan Congresswoman Brenda Lawrence. Congresswoman, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing great. First and foremost, let's get right to it. Republicans had an opportunity to do something about this. It was Congressman Sensenbrenner of Wisconsin who tried to push forward a bill, virtually got no co-sponsors from the Republican side. The Republicans clearly have used this Supreme Court decision to lead voter suppression, and that's why they did nothing over these years in order to fix this decision by the Supreme Court.
You know, so often when people, and it was amazing to watch on the floor, a white man of privilege saying, we don't have a problem. We have the Voting Rights Act. There was no person found that wanted to vote that couldn't vote. But let's talk about, in the example of Terri Sewell's district, they closed down the registration centers, which is usually the DMTs. And they closed them down in all the black neighborhoods. So if you become of voting age and wanted to register to vote, you would have to take a bus or transportation, drive out to another community to register to vote. There were people who changed I was campaigning last year in South Carolina, and it was a historically black university who's had a voting precinct on that campus for over 50 years, and they closed it down. These are things that, you know, they say, oh, they can go to the other precinct. But they're systematic, and they were happening all over the country. And today we're saying we will not tolerate that. And if you do it, there will be consequences, because we will have the right to do an evaluation and to come in and to examine what you've done and the impact it has on the community. Another thing that so many people, when we're fighting and saying we want voting rights, they go like, oh, please, you can vote if you want to. The number one thing to destroy or to enslave a people is to take away their right to vote. It does not go unnoticed that history has shown that we literally had our forefathers die for us to have the right to vote. And they fought us and persecuted us and did everything, because the fear is that if people in this democracy go to the polls and vote, it literally will create an economy that all people will be able to be treated equally and not this just privileged few.
Now, only one Republican had the guts to stand with Democrats. That is Congressman Brian Fitz of Pennsylvania. That shows you how the Republican Party has changed, because previously, when the Voting Rights Act was reauthorized in Congress, typically it passed with flying colors by Democrats and Republicans.
Well, you know, I'm in an environment now in Congress, and Roland, when this president took office, and even before, his number one agenda is to divide, separate, and create this us and them environment. He has solidified now the Republican Party to say that anything that the Democrats want to do, because that's what Mitch McConnell does, any bill that's sent to the Senate, even the bipartisan bills, there are over 400 bills sitting in his graveyard. And Trump is fine with that. And McConnell said, I will do whatever Trump wants me to do. Because they do not want to bring anything to the death of this president that he would have to sign that shows that he has any compassion or any sense of wanting to make this country a country that works for everyone. And so when you look at this partisan divide, it's being nurtured and it's being just driven and rewarded by the President of the United States of America.
Again, that's Congressman Brian Fitzpatrick. I gave his Twitter handle is @RepBrianFitz. Now, here's the real issue. The question now is, will Senator Mitch McConnell allow this to come to the floor in the Senate? I doubt it very seriously. He's blocked more than 300 bills passed by House Democrats. What message does that send? What do you say the message sends to black voters, to young voters, to white voters, all voters who care about voting rights at the Republican Party? Likely is not going to allow this bill to move forward?
Well, this just goes right on in the bin with all the other bills in violence against women. We have passed gun violence control laws and sent it to the House. These are things Americans care about. And when it comes to being, as Terri Sewell said, Congresswoman Sewell said, the sensitivity that the black community has for the right to vote, I'm sorry, you can think it's over the top. I know for a fact that the right to vote was something that was denied my people, and it didn't come without sacrifice, death, and violence and resistance. And so I'm going to fight to keep that. And I'm watching everything that you do. And this is a slippery slope that we stop. So just like those examples I gave you, this was happening all over the country. And so if I can get away with this, the next time I'll do something even more egregious, because at the end of the day, the number of people who vote, I can control who's voting and who's not.
All right, Congresswoman Brenda Lawrence of Michigan, I appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
I want to wish you a happy holidays if I don't talk to you again. So God bless you, and just keep bringing it. I appreciate your voice. I need your voice.
Will do. We appreciate it. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Let's bring in our panel.
Okay.
Michael Brown, former Vice Chair, DNC Finance Committee. Dr. Niambi Carter, Department of Political Science, Howard University. Julian Boykin, Founder, Chairman, Young Republicans of Southern Maryland. Julian, I want to go to you. Dude, what the hell? What is wrong with your party? I mean, the reality is, in the past, whenever the Voting Rights Act came up for reauthorization, it was signed into law by a Republican president. Republicans voted for it, but after that Supreme Court decision, Republicans have been hostile to the Voting Rights Act, and one Republican had the guts today to stand with Democrats.
Can't defend that. I'm not a fan of voter suppression. I think change needs to come. So for me, I'm all about helping people become registered voters and also making sure I get many people as possible to the polls, whether it's, transporting them to the polls. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to make excuses for my party. I don't agree with the old guard and some of the things that they've done, some of the decisions that they made before me. But as for going forward, I plan on trying to make changes. And one change is the voter suppression. At some point, you have to allow people to express themselves by becoming registered voters and voting. When you implement voter suppression, that means that you're intimidated by people and their right to vote. So you think people are not going to vote the way you want them to. At the end of the day, if you put a message out there and people are either going to agree with your message or they're not going to agree, but I don't believe in voter suppression. When you implement that, that means you're trying to control people, and that's one way to control people is by suppressing their vote. So I encourage people, if you don't think voting is important, this is a wake-up call that, hey, if you're not impressed with where your schools are looking, where the roads are looking, not enough jobs in your area, I highly encourage you, get out and vote. It doesn't matter about the party, but make sure you understand the importance of voting. By not voting, you're telling people you don't care. If you're telling someone you don't care, then you're not trying to become an asset and trying to fix the problem. You're not trying to find a solution for the problem at all.
Dr. Nyambi Carter, I want to go to you. Bottom line here, the Republican Party has led voter suppression. It is a part of their strategy. This is what their goal is. It is undeniable. And the fact that only one had the guts to vote for the bill today shows you exactly where this party, this national party, Donald Trump, McConnell, McCarthy in the House, Roland McDaniel, the GOP chairwoman, state legislatures all across the country, the Republican Party does not want to support voting rights in this country.
Well, absolutely. I mean, there's nothing that barred them in all these years to rewrite that section of the Voting Rights Act, right? All that the Supreme Court said in Shelby County v. Holder was that the formula that was used in 1965 was too old. They could have done something in all these years. The fact that they didn't do anything other than pursue voter suppression in various state legislatures around the country tells you they had no intention, right? Because if you don't rewrite the Section 4 formula, then Section 5 is null and void. And so they don't want preclearance. They actually don't want oversight of the election laws in those states that had a long history, right, of harming people who were considered minorities, not just racial minorities, but language minorities and others. So this matters not just for black people, this matters for indigenous populations, Native Americans who've been having lots of difficulty registering and trying to exercise their right to vote, Latino citizens, Asians, and others. So this is very purposeful. The Republicans saw the writing on the wall over 20 years ago. They knew that they were going to be outvoted demographically, and they don't want to lose. So the way they do it is to fix the system. If you can control the institution, then you can extend your longevity, and that's exactly what they've done. And the fact that they've not tried to do anything more proactive in all these years to rewrite the voting rights formula in Section 4 tells you everything you need to know about what game they're playing, right? They're going to take away people's constitutional rights so they can extend their ability to win elections because the country is moving away from them demographically and in terms of what they feel ideologically. And they know this. And all that they can do now is rig the system so they can hang on to an ideology that really nobody wants. And if they put themselves up in head-to-head competition, they're going to lose.
Michael Brown, this is simple. This is a party with no guts whatsoever. They're showing their true colors. And I keep saying to black folks, understand what's going on. Donald Trump has now appointed one out of every 5 federal judges. They are pushing folks through who are hostile to voting rights, who are hostile to civil rights. And the bottom line is this here, a vote for Donald Trump and the Republican Party in 2020 is a vote against voting rights.
And co-signing with what the professor said, suppression is clearly one issue, but this also should be permanent. And until it becomes permanent, we're going to continue to have these skirmishes every decade and a half, every 2 decades or so. So it has to become permanent. And once it does, and that's where the leadership comes, and we've had 2 opportunities. We had it in the first term of President Clinton when you had a Democratic Senate and a Democratic House. Same with the first term of Obama. You had a Democratic Senate, Democratic House. And everyone always says, oh, well, we'll get to that issue, just like D.C. statehood. Oh, we'll get to that issue. It's not a priority, but it's important to us. And now, when things shift, and now you have a president like 45 and a party that's following him no matter what he says relative to whether it's suppression, not giving folks a chance to vote, whether it's making sure these federal judges are here, even though the demographics are changing, as you mentioned, you have to make it permanent.
Simple as that. Well, bottom line is here. We'll see what happens on the Senate. I have absolutely no doubt that Mitch McConnell will not take this bill up. He does not care. That's how he has operated. And so expect the Republicans in the Senate to completely allow this bill to die. As all you need to know exactly where the Republicans stand today when it comes to voting rights. All right, folks, back to our Roland Mark Unfiltered video in just one moment. All right, the folks at marijuanastock.org have already reached more than half of their funding goal for the hemp CBD investment. That's right. If you want to take advantage of this great opportunity, you need to do it now because it won't last much longer. If you don't know, I'm talking about the hemp plant, the good cousin to marijuana with a much higher concentration of CBD. That means hemp gives you all the medical benefits of marijuana without getting you high. Also, if you don't know, hemp farming is now legal in the United States, creating one of the largest commodities worldwide. It's just an opportunity for you to invest in a burgeoning economy, and that's where the folks at 420 Real Estate come in. Their business model is simple. They buy land that supports hemp CBD grow operations and lease it to licensed, high-paying tenants. That's right, they are hemp CBD landlords, and you can get in on the action. As hemp continues to change the economic landscape, 420 Real Estate is allowing you to chase the American dream. What you can do is go to, again, their website, marijuanastock.org, to participate in this crowdfunding campaign. The minimum amount is $200. You can invest up to $10,000. Of course, the fund is going to be closing soon, so to invest, go to marijuanastock.org. That's marijuanastock.org. Get in the game and get in the game now. Now back to your Roland Martin Unfiltered video.